Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks, Dick, for that introduction. I'm very pleased to welcome Congressman Bob Inglis to BC. I first saw him speak at the National Center for Science and the Environment Conference in Washington, D.C. in January. And there I sort of cornered him after his talk and asked him if he would be interested in coming to BC. And he said that he's really enthusiastic about coming to college campuses, particularly when he can work with college Republican student groups. And so I got back to BC and I reached out to E.J. Risley and Mike Krupe from the College Republicans about bringing him, and they were really enthusiastic about that idea and co-sponsoring this event. And we just actually had a dinner with the student group and Congressman Inglis just now. And then I reached out, when I got back, I reached out to Dick Keeley from the Carroll School of Management, and he was enthusiastic about Inglis participating in the Winston Forum on Business Ethics, which is what we're doing right here. I think this is a nice follow-up event to the Bill McKibben lecture that the Winston Center sponsored a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I think. So I'm pleased to bring these groups together for the event because it highlights how the Environmental Studies program is interested in engaging students from across the university and across the political spectrum in a dialogue about our sustainable future. Bob Inglis grew up in and lives in and represented South Carolina in Congress. He earned a bachelor's degree in political science from Duke in 1981 and a law degree from UVA in 1984. He was first elected to Congress in 1992 and served 3 terms. He then served in Congress again from 2004 to 2010, during which time he was a member of the House Science Committee, where he serves as the chairman of the Research Subcommittee and then as the ranking member of the Energy and Environment Subcommittee. During his 6 years on the Science Subcommittee, interactions with scientists in Antarctica, Australia, and elsewhere shaped his views on climate change. In the turmoil of the financial crisis, Inglis lost his bid for re-election in June in 2010. He then spent time at the Institute of Politics at Harvard and the Nicholas School for the Environment at Duke University, and then founded the Energy and Environment Institute at George Mason University in 2012, where he's the executive director. ENEI proposes eliminating government incentives associated with energy. No more tax breaks for solar panels or electric cars, and no more subsidies for oil companies. They suggest that we create a carbon tax on fossil fuels, which would make renewables more profitable. I'm sure that Inglis will talk tonight about the political challenge associated with bringing up the word tax, but ENEI believes it's more sellable options to conservatives when we tax the thing we don't want, carbon emissions, rather than tax the things that we do want, which is income. Bob Inglis is a very influential conservative voice on climate change and energy policy. He's talked about climate change in Congress, colleges and universities, and on media outlets, including Showtime's Years of Living Dangerously, The Colbert Report, and NPR's This American Life. He's interested in working with young people on policy solutions for an optimistic future. Please join me in welcoming Bob Inglis to BC.
Let's see, if I turn this on, can you hear me all right? Yes, I think so. Better to be close to a politician because you got to see his lips moving. That's how you know he's lying. So I got to be close enough for you to see the lips moving, you know. And so here's what I'd like to do tonight. First, I'd like to give you a little bit background to add on to what Noah said about how I've come to this work. Second, tell you about that work, and then very interested in hearing your questions and comments about what I'm going to say here tonight. So those 3 things. But first, I've got to introduce my daughter who's here. Mary Ashton Inglis and her boyfriend Gordon are now going to be my Preston to Service staff members for the night who will hand out this initial card. So that's for part 2, which is what I'm going to tell you what we're doing. So Mary Ashton and Gordon are going to walk around handing it. You'll hand them out now. That way we'll be in business when it gets time to that second part. It's wonderful to have a daughter in Boston, you see, so therefore I have slave labor right here available to me. She was always a campaign worker, so there you go. She's got to keep on working. So as Noah said, I represented Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, probably the reddest district in the reddest state in the nation. Anybody want to fight me for that distinction here? If you're from Boston, you better not try to fight me for that. Boston or Cambridge is not happening for you. I was in Utah a while back, and I had some people that wanted to fight me for that distinction, but I don't think I'd get a fight here in Massachusetts. Probably the reddest district in the reddest state. It was one of 6 House members. Now there are 7 districts in South Carolina. On this topic, I'll tell you that when I was first in Congress, I said that climate change was hooey, Al Gore's imagination. In fact, I had a very successful press conference along about 1993 when Al Gore was proposing a BTU tax. We set up a press conference in downtown Greenville in front of some sacks of coal because, you know, it's a very harsh winter in Greenville, South Carolina. Just kidding. But we do have some people that heat with coal and wood, and so they were in front of these stacks of coal or sacks of coal and wood. And it was Mike from College Republicans would love this. Here I was to do this outreach event in downtown Greenville. And so I said, Al Gore and the Democrats want to raise the energy prices for these poor people. Vote Republican. It's a very successful press conference. We got some good press out of it. And I can tell you that it's total ignorance on my part about climate change. I hadn't looked into it at all. All I knew was Al Gore was for it, and therefore I was against it. That was the end of the inquiry. As my first 6 years in Congress, then I was out 6 years doing commercial real estate law. Mary Ashton's brother, our oldest child, came to me in 2004. He's voting for the first time. He just turned 18. And so he said, I'll vote for you, Dad, but you're going to clean up your act on the environment. And so Mary Ashton and her 3 sisters, her mother, all agreed. So I had this new constituency, any of whom could change the locks on the doors. You know, it's very important to respond to such a close constituency. And so that was step 1. Step 2 in this 3 steps of change for me was getting on science committee when I went back to Congress in 2004. I'm not a scientist, as you just heard. I'm a commercial real estate lawyer, actually. But I played a scientist on science committee when the lights came on. And so, you know, the television lights come on and you act like you're a scientist on the science committee. And so I got to go to Antarctica and saw the evidence in the ice core drillings. And for those of you who are probably way beyond this understanding, but some of us may be new to climate change, it's basically what I saw there was this, that in the ice core drillings, what you have is a record of the Earth's atmosphere. The South Pole, an interesting fun fact to know and tell you learned here tonight, is a desert. It gets 1/4 of an inch of precipitation a year. The South Pole is 10,000 feet above sea level, and the folks there like to describe the ski conditions at the South Pole as a mile of ice and a couple inches of powder. It's in that record of ice, because it's only 1/4 inch of precipitation a year, there's a record of the Earth's atmosphere. And so we have scientists that are drilling through the ice, pulling up, basically it's a mile of ice sitting on top of a mile of dirt to make it 10,000 feet or so above sea level. And in that mile of ice is a record of the Earth's atmosphere. You can see the levels of CO2. And what you see there is an uptick that coincides with the Industrial Revolution, which only makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I'm just a commercial real estate lawyer, and I'm not even a trial lawyer, but I think if I were at trial with this, I think I could say to the jury, it's like this. When I'm burning trees in my fireplace this winter in Travelers Rest, South Carolina, no big impact, because that tree has just been growing in this same time period and taking CO2 out of the air as part of its life process, and now I'm just burning it and releasing it. But if I go deep into the earth and pull up trees and animals and other vegetation that have been going a long time and bring them to the surface and burn them, I'm changing the chemistry of the air. By the way, I will point out to you when it is that the disputers of the scientific consensus dispute. They don't dispute anything I've said yet. I mean, there's nobody that would dispute this chemistry observation, that you are changing the chemistry of the air by burning that fossil fuel. And then the physics of light are such that light enters, but radiant heat doesn't all escape. Thank goodness it doesn't, because if it did, we'd be freezing to death here. It'd be even colder than Boston in the winter. And again, no dispute yet of that. And most of the people that doubt what the 97% of climate scientists would say don't dispute any of the physics there. The dispute begins about what is the role of the human involvement and how much of it is attributable to us. We can get into that if you want to. So that's what I saw in Antarctica. The second step for me, therefore, was seeing the science and being persuaded by it. By the way, I knew that being in Antarctica would be interesting to see the scenery and see the science, but what I didn't know was going to be so interesting was the people, fascinating folks in Antarctica that work down there. I'll tell you, if you want to work there, you can. I came home and told my kids, and my son actually did it, went down there and worked. I'm trying to convince my wife that that's what we should do in retirement, is I go down there and drive a taxi at McMurdo Station. So I don't have her on board yet about going down there. But step 3 for me, final step in my metamorphosis, was actually something of a spiritual epiphany. I was on another science committee trip looking at coral bleaching in the Great Barrier Reef and snorkeling with an Aussie climate scientist who I could tell by his face and voice as we'd come to the surface, and he'd tell me, I'll show you something. We'll go back down, I'll show you. He's all excited. His face, his voice were all, I could tell, worshiping the God of creation, not the creation itself. He's not an earth worshiper. I could tell that he shared my worldview about that creator. Afterwards, we had an opportunity to share words and find out that, in fact, we do share a worldview, and that he told me about conservation changes he's making in his life in order to love God and love people. And I got right inspired by that. I thought, that's really neat. I want to be like Scott, loving God and loving people. So I came home and introduced the Raise Wages, Cut Carbon Act of 2009. Note to self, do not introduce carbon tax in the midst of Great Recession. It will not go well in that reddest district in the reddest state of the nation. And so it did not go well. I'd committed some heresies against Republican orthodoxy. I'd voted for TARP. As I told the college Republicans earlier, that's Barack Obama's stimulus package, as you remember. Actually, it's not. TARP was George W. Bush and Hank Paulson literally begging for a vote to save the banking system. The stimulus package was President Obama subsequent to that. But anyway, so I voted for TARP. That was never be forgiven by the Tea Party. I was for comprehensive immigration reform. That was a heresy. And I voted against a troop surge out of conservative concerns for nation building that I thought that George Bush, and he is my friend, was doing in Iraq. It's interesting, isn't it, that orthodoxies change pretty quickly. At the time, that got me in real trouble, that vote on the troop surge. But until 4 terribly brutal beheadings, non-intervention had become the dominant view of my party. So it went from interventionism to more of an isolationist position, now it is swinging back toward interventionism. So it moves. There's an encouragement, that'll be the conclusion of the night, I hope, is that these orthodoxies are flexible. And so if you're a conservative like me that hopes for action on climate change, there's some hope here that these things really do change. Even though they look like they're fixed, they're actually quite fluid. So, but my biggest heresy was just saying that climate change is real and let's do something about it. That's what got me in trouble, because it seemed to many that I had crossed the tribal lines, that I'd gone over and joined Al Gore's tribe. So this guy who has had, from my record in Congress, a 93 American Conservative Union rating. That's an A. Is that an A here at Boston College? 93? It's a low A? High B plus? What do you think? It's an A? It's an A. Okay, good. It's an A. You understand, it's not my friend Jim DeMint's perfect 100 with the ACU, but it was a former senator from South Carolina. But it was a 93. 100% Christian Coalition, 100% National Right to Life, A with the NRA, 0 with the Americans for Democratic Action, 23 by some mistake with the AFL-CIO. I was really hoping for a 0, and I'd like a recount on that one to get it to a 0. In other words, a pretty conservative fellow, right? But I got tossed out by the Tea Party and got only 29% of the vote in a Republican runoff in June of 2010. So then what came is this new opportunity in life to basically pick up the best idea I came across in Congress, which was a revenue-neutral, border-adjustable carbon tax, and advance it across the country with the support of some folks who came to me and said, "You are an unusual zoo animal, a conservative, an actual conservative, who says climate change is real and has a solution. So will you speak and write for us on that proposition?" And I said, well, if the cage is nice and the food's okay, let's go. And so the cage is okay and the food's pretty good. So here I am on the road making the case across the country that conservatives have an answer to climate change. So enough about me. Let's talk about what we're doing at the Energy and Enterprise Initiative, that even as we speak is morphing into the new name that you see on that card, which is Republican. And the reason we're morphing is my very dull title that I gave the operation, Energy and Enterprise Initiative, needs to give way to something that identifies a new tribe. People who believe in free enterprise, who yet believe that there is an answer to climate change. And so it starts with the energy optimist part that you see there. The environmental left gives you the feeling that we all need to do with less, that somehow we all need to hunker down and just decide that we're going to be less comfortable and less mobile, and we're just going to all do with less. So to walk and eat bugs. Well, the only problem with walking and eating bugs is not many people are willing. So what we're about is saying that, no, we want more energy, more mobility, more freedom, more convenience. We just want it faster, better, cheaper. And so we're energy optimists. And by the way, one of the best arguments against action on climate comes from conservatives like my friend Jim DeMint at Heritage. The Heritage Foundation makes the argument that you can't it's immoral to hold back the developing world such that they can't have lights at night so that you can save the polar bears. It's just immoral to so disadvantage human beings. And I think it's a pretty good argument. So the answer that we give is, no, we're interested in the developing world having lots more energy, lots more mobility, lots more communication, so that they can add their productive work and human spirit to what's going on around the world. And so for us as conservatives, we believe there's an opportunity here to take especially distributed energy systems and develop them here, perfect them, and then sell them, serve customers around the world, and hopefully make a lot of money out of it. Because we're into creating wealth at the Energy and Enterprise Initiative, because after all, we are conservatives. And it's also a good point that the Heritage Foundation makes, that wealth is the one thing that you can see that makes the environment get better. In other words, if you have wealthy societies, they're going to be cleaner societies. And so it's vital to see a way that there's growth in the whole world, and the world's economy grows. So we're energy optimists. We're also climate realists. And I'd invite you to be a climate realist in one of several categories. One category is sort of like I did, just sort of come to see the science and celebrate the science. And I realize that for some people, some of my conservative friends, that's a little bit of a problem. In fact, before we landed our operation at George Mason University, I was talking to a foundation, they'll go nameless, conservative family actually, and I made the mistake toward the end of our negotiations about us putting our support there and channeling it through their operation. I said something about celebrating the science. And the guy said to me, hold up, what did you just say? Celebrate the science? That doesn't sound conservative. Just celebrate science? And I said, no, we want to celebrate science. And these are people, especially people of faith who I was talking to here, and they had a little bit of discomfort between the contest between faith and science. And I can understand that, but our view at the Energy Enterprise Initiative is that actually faith is affirmed by science. And it's exciting to see the patterns of the Creator God reflected in the creation itself. Paul in the book of Romans says that the things of God can be known from the creation itself. And so we say, come on with the science. This is very exciting. It's a process of discovery even of the Creator. And so we celebrate the science. And so it could be that you're a climate realist like us, celebrating science. It could be that you're a climate realist who understands that even if it's not certain and the science is not settled, yet the science indicates risk, and it is prudential to be cognizant of that risk, right? And to move against it in some ways, even if you're not certain of the risk. It's sort of like this. I can't speak to the students now. I'm talking to the post-students here. Your house might be insured tonight for fire insurance. I can pretty much guarantee you that your house isn't going to burn down tonight. So how about this? I got a $20 bill for anybody who will call now to their insurance agent and cancel your fire insurance just for tonight. Your house is not going to burn down tonight. Probably. It's like one time we were hiking out west, and I said to everybody in my family, I think that's probably raspberries. Nobody ate any of them. But, your house is probably not going to burn down tonight. So here's $20. Call your agent. Because the risk of your house burning is less than $20. So it would behoove you to take my $20 and to cancel your insurance, but you're not going to do it, are you? Why? It'd be very imprudential of you to do so. That would be crazy. So even if you're not certain of risk, still you take steps against risk. And so here, by the way, if you're a progressive and trying just to come here to experience what this conservative might say, here's something you can say to Uncle Charlie when he comes to Thanksgiving with you, the one that goes to the internet and finds out things that are inaccurate and then comes to Thanksgiving and is, Mary Ashton has an uncle like that. So here's what you can say to Uncle Charlie, is that you were there with this conservative, and there he was talking about these prudential steps that you can take. And you can maybe persuade him that there really is risk here. And even if the science isn't settled, and here's how you can really help Uncle Charlie open up. Because what Uncle Charlie is very offended by is people like me saying what I said earlier about 97% of climate scientists, and maybe if you use that at Thanksgiving dinner, it isn't going to go well, because Charlie's going to doubt the 97 number and everything. So what you can just say to Charlie is, Charlie, science is never settled. This will really help him. This will open his mind, perhaps, is to point out to him, science is in fact not settled on climate change. It does indicate risk. So now, Charlie, will we proceed pell-mell in the face of that risk? Or will we move to reduce that risk? And so it's not a matter of needing to be science completely settled, because, in fact, it never is. It's like, is this E equals mc squared? Maybe, maybe not. There's some people in Switzerland that are trying to prove that Einstein didn't quite have it right. And if they prove it, they're going to get that thing named for them. They're going to be remembered forever. And science advances that way. You improve on Einstein, you're going to get the thing named for yourself. And so, so the science of climate change is not settled, but it does indicate risk. It's just like your situation about why it isn't nobody's jumping at my $20 bill here to cancel your house insurance, right? So that's another kind of climate realist. You can be somebody that with us celebrates the science. You can be somebody that just realizes there's risk. Or third and final category of climate realist, you can be a conservative that realizes that the country will take something over nothing when they decide they want something. And that's the risk that conservatives right now are running in our country on climate change, is when the country decides that it has a felt need and wants to act on climate, it will take a suboptimal solution like EPA regulation of CO2 through the Clean Air Act over a much better solution that was never offered. And so, this is a rare opportunity. If you're a fellow conservative, this is a rare opportunity for us to get ahead of something. Because, we were the ones that basically sort of were dragged kicking and screaming to Social Security, and then Medicare, and then Obamacare. We knew that all three of those things are completely unsustainable. But the country decided that it wanted them, even though it knew they were unsustainable. Exit polling in the 08 race showed that people knew that the health care proposal was unsustainable, but they took it. Why? If you've got a felt need, you will take something over nothing, even if you know that it's not sustainable. You just hope that maybe someday down the road we'll fix Social Security, figure out how to undo a Ponzi scheme. As I was telling the college Republicans earlier, Mitt Romney was right when he said it was a Ponzi scheme. It is in fact a Ponzi scheme, but I'm not running for president, so I can say that. If you run for president and you're in Florida, you better not say that. It's a bad move. We have an opportunity as conservatives to get out front of this and to show a better way. And I will describe that better way, and then I'm going to stop and see questions and comments. What we think is better than what the president is talking about doing. The president's talking about a regulatory solution. He's talking about regulating CO2 through the Clean Air Act. Now, in fairness to him, if he were here, what he would say is, Inglis, listen, the Supreme Court has ordered me to do this. And he would be right. The Supreme Court said, listen, if you make an endangerment, if the EPA makes an endangerment finding, you must regulate CO2 pursuant to the Clean Air Act. And so he'd say, listen, we're just doing what we had got to do because the Supreme Court has ordered us to do it. And I'd say, understand that, but can you see a way out of the box that you're in? The box that you're in, sir, is creating America the double loser here. Because what's going to happen is that when you, through the Clean Air Act, basically in a clumsy way, price carbon dioxide, very clumsy way, but you're essentially pricing carbon dioxide that way. When you do that, you're going to do it domestic only. And the result will be that we're the double losers. First, we lose employment to countries that aren't internalizing that negative externality, aren't pricing carbon dioxide, like, for example, China. So when companies pick up and move from here to China, we lose jobs. But second, we lose the race to reduce global emissions. Because when they get to China, they're going to emit more. So the result is the box we're in on Clean Air Act regulation will yield to America the double loser. So we've got to find a better way. How about this as a better way? That free enterprise actually has a role, has an answer here, and the only role for government is just to be the honest cop on the beat that puts all the cost in on all the fuels. And as you heard Noah say in his introduction, our idea of the Energy Enterprise Initiative is to eliminate all the subsidies for all the fuels. No more cylinders. No more production tax credit for wind. No more electric car credits. No more of any of those things where the government's putting its thumb on the scales to benefit one technology over the other. It's way Soviet. It's the way the Soviet Union did things. We don't want to be that way. So what we'd rather do is just eliminate all those subsidies. Now, that's so you can see how, by the way, if you're analyzing this conversation from a political perspective, you can understand how that makes sense to the Tea Party, right? All of that just scored well in a dial testing with the Tea Party. Here comes the hard part that I have to explain to the Tea Party, is maybe the biggest subsidy of them all is being able to belch and burn into the trash dump of the sky without paying a tipping fee. And if you charge appropriately for the harm done by those emissions, that fixes the market distortion. And then technology will create all these new innovations that will drive the creation of wealth and the betterment of lives and the spread of energy around the world. And we'll be back to that thing about being an energy optimist. The way we think we can do that practically is this. An upstream application of a revenue-neutral, border-adjustable carbon tax. Now, let me tell you the problem with that politically is when you say carbon, conservatives break out in hives, and when you say tax, they go into anaphylactic shock. And so it's a real problem to talk about carbon taxes. So what we prefer to call that is that's what I just gave it, that title I just gave is what economists would call it, I think, is an upstream application of a revenue-neutral, border-adjustable carbon tax. Probably better to call it a 100% returnable emissions tax. We admit it's a tax. We admit that government is imposing that tax. But what we want to do is tie it with a 100% return of the money in a tax cut of existing taxes. So it's what Greg Mankiw across town at Harvard would say is he's got something called the Pagovian Club. It's this idea that Pagoo had a while ago, many years ago, to basically tax the things you want less of and untax the things you want more of. And so it's a tax swap is what we're talking about. We would cut taxes, say, on corporate income taxes, individual income taxes, FICA taxes, that's the payroll taxes you pay and your employer pays. It's 12.4% of first dollar of income. Or we dividend the money back. All of those are acceptable to us. We're ecumenical as to which way the return comes. But we would make it so that it's 100% returnable. Emissions tax. The emissions are taxed based on the marginal harm they're causing for the next ton of CO2 that's emitted. And when you're talking to Charlie at Thanksgiving, you can say to him, some of those costs are clear and quantifiable and immediate, they're health cost. And then what's happening, Charlie, is that some people are getting away with socializing their soot. And that, see how that works for the Tea Party? They're socializing their soot. And it really is this where the Tea Party is right. This is just wrong to allow people to socialize their soot. Because we are paying, all right. Milton Friedman in 1975 had a book, the title of which was There's No Such Thing as a Free Lunch. And it's surely true in the case of electricity generation, for example. We are currently paying the full price, the full cost of coal-fired electricity, just not at the meter. We pay through an opaque healthcare system. Because what happens is those small particulates go up in the air, we breathe them in, most of us just cough it up, it's okay, we move along. Some of us end up in the hospital. And we pay all right. If it's my dad who's 91 and on Medicare, we pay for him. We all pay for him. If it's a Medicaid recipient, we all pay for them. If it's somebody on your insurance company, I say you got Blue Cross Blue Shield, they got Blue Cross Blue Shield. You pay all right, the premiums just went up because that lung patient is now in the hospital. Or we pay through cost shift. In any event, Milton Friedman can't be wrong, just like Ronald Reagan can't be wrong, right? I mean, if you're a conservative, those two people cannot be wrong. It's just it's definitionally can't be wrong. And so there's no such thing as a free lunch. We're paying all right. And so what we want to do is just make those costs appear at the meter. And the way to do that is this revenue-neutral, border-adjustable carbon tax. And I'm going to stop here real soon with just these 2 points, is it's revenue-neutral and it's border-adjustable. Revenue-neutral means you got to cut taxes somewhere else. Give me a dollar-for-dollar tax cut. No growth of government. In fact, a good point to pass on to Charlie, it's actually a reduction in the size of government because we can repeal some Clean Air Act regulations if this goes through. Because there's some Clean Air Act regulations that become redundant once carbon is priced. So you can actually shrink the size of government in what we're talking about. Then it's also got to be border adjustable. Because, as you see on that little card, it's crucial to get China in and the rest of our trading partners in. If they're not in, this is futile. So if I were still in Congress and you gave me a border-adjustable carbon tax, I'm sorry, if you gave me a revenue-neutral carbon tax that was not border-adjustable, I don't think I could vote for it because I represented a wonderful manufacturing district. And the problem, as I said earlier about the president's approach, this domestic only, is it means that if you price this externality internal to America but not get our trading partners to come along, you end up causing people to pick up and move productive capacity to places where they emit more. So you lose employment and you lose this race to reduce global emissions. So the border adjustment will work like this. China is sending in flat steel. It arrives here, and a tax is collected, carbon tax is collected based on American equivalent products for the carbon content that we know is in that steel, based on American equivalents. Now, what would happen then? China would challenge it in the WTO, right? So we'd have a case now in the WTO. They'd be saying it's an impermissible tariff. We'd be saying, based on precedents in the chemical industry, that it's okay with WTO existing rules. We think we can win that case. And if we do, see if you track with this, that China, within 24 hours, because they have an amazing way of reaching consensus, as you know, would impose the same price on carbon dioxide. And why? Well, how long would it take you to figure out, if you're a state-run industry in China, you're shipping in the flat steel, you're remitting taxes on entry to Washington, that if you had just imposed this tax in China, you would have been remitting that money to Beijing. So within 24 hours, they're imposing the same price on carbon dioxide after it's upheld by the WTO. And then the rest of the world follows. And we've now got energy at its truer cost with the negative externalities internalized, the market distortion taken away. And then all those things that I got to see on the science committee that were so exciting and so interesting, you know, wave energy and all kinds of battery technology, all of which is available at places like Boston College and other places that do research. The only problem is they can't make it economic. They can't get to a marketplace because it doesn't make sense in the marketplace because the price of the incumbent fuel is so cheap. The fossil fuels are so cheap. But if you have those go to truer cost, all kinds of technologies become possible. And at that point, back to where I started about energy optimist, We start selling distributed energy systems. We develop distributed energy systems, and we sell them all around the world, serving customers, making money, creating wealth, and improving lives all around the world with cleaner air and with light in dark places right now. So that's our story. We're sticking to it. But let me see what questions you've got about the Energy and Enterprise Initiative or that conversation with Charlie that's coming up at Thanksgiving or anything else. Yes, sir. Yeah, if everybody can hear, he's asking is, wouldn't EPA regulation effectively price carbon dioxide as well? And then you could do a border adjustment to combine with that. You can make that case. I think that I think it's pretty clear, though, it's a pretty cumbersome way to price carbon dioxide. I mean, they're going to be inherently in regulations, there are exceptions, there's an awful lot of litigation that's come from it. It's sort of like doing CAFE standards, you know. I voted for CAFE standards, but it's really not the best way to handle the situation. A price signal is far more powerful. But I do acknowledge that is somewhat of a faith statement, a faith in free enterprise and a faith in free markets, and a faith that really price signals work. That if you give me a price signal, I, in enlightened self-interest, will do what is in my self-interest. And without you having to hire a regulator to roll past my business or my house and tell me what to do. That's the problem, I think. That's the cumbersome nature of a regulatory answer. Yeah, but I will tell you this, there are some probably in the room that are a little more scientific than I am, right? And so some in the scientific world would say, no, really, this is what we got to do. We got to cap this. We know the level we need to stay under. So let's have a technological solution there, and you all in this economics thing, you just got to get with the program and get under this cap. However you want to do it is fine. Well, I understand that scientific point of view, but the problem with it is I don't think we can get votes for that in the U.S. Congress. If you come along with me in this faith in free enterprise, what you'll see is that I think we'll deliver innovation faster than we could ever imagine. Again, this is a faith statement, but I got some data for the faith, which is, I was telling the college Republicans earlier, in my first campaign in 1992, the previous century, I carried around a bag phone. It worked in about 2/3 of the district. And roaming charges are, I think, $3 a minute on the thing. It was an enormous cost for the campaign. Now you've got a smartphone in your pocket, and you don't even, you're wondering, what is he talking about roaming charges, right? You're thinking, what is that? It's something from prehistoric times. And so what happened there is consumers saw this exciting new innovation, and they demanded more and more of it, and the price came down as these people tried to get your money out of your pocket and put a smartphone in it instead. And they've succeeded. And we've all succeeded by having this great technology. That's going to happen in energy if we just unleash the power of free enterprise here. What else do you want to know? Yes, sir.
I had two areas of political concern, one which you didn't mention and the other which you talked about peripherally. The first one is lobbying and the role of lobbying and how it affects all you're talking about.
Yeah.
The second is my complete confusion about the role of Congress vis-a-vis the EPA.
Yeah. As to the second point, the role of the EPA, if everybody heard that, is right now the EPA is acting. It's being sued, or as soon as the finals are out, they will be sued. There are power companies ready to sue them. Once that litigation is all resolved, if the EPA is successful, and it'll be long after Barack Obama has left office, by the way, they may proceed, but the Congress may defund their operations. And so I hope that answers to your question about where we stand with Congress and EPA. And the first part of the question was about lobbying, yes. So here's my view about campaign cash. It's important, but it's not dispositive on this question. And that's a minority view, all right? A lot of people would say, no, it's all about the cash. But here's what I would submit in support of my argument, that it's not dispositive. It's not the only thing that's going to matter here. Because it's like this. Campaign cash is important to generate a wave, but the more important thing is the level of the tide. So what happened in the case of climate change is in the Great Recession, the tide was in on distrust of government and all institutions to add to a historic high tide the distrust of banking institutions. We had not previously doubted them or mistrusted them, but we had the normal distrust of government, and then we added another foot or two on that level of the tide. It was an enormous spring tide that came in the fall of October of 2008, right? And so this enormous distrust, tide was in, and some people saw their opportunity to spend a little bit of campaign cash to generate a wave that would cause the wave to come over the seawall and short out the equipment on climate change. And they were very successful, and they did in fact short out all the equipment. And what looked like a consensus among Republicans and Democrats in Congress and some action about to happen went to no action happening, no how, no way. So they're pretty successful, right, in the spending of their money. But here's the thing. It all depends on the level of the tide, right? Take, for example, if you were running for Congress in the 1970s in the South, you could have made your campaign all about Taiwan. And you could have said, by golly, send me to Congress, and those communists are not taking over Taiwan. And it would have been a pretty good campaign. And you might have won the primary and won the general. But I would suggest to you, if you're running in 2014, I don't think you should make Taiwan the #1 issue in your campaign. It is dead low tide on that issue. And there is no amount of campaign cash that you can spend to create a wave that's big enough to come over that seawall. And so we're now in the process of waiting for the Great Recovery to take down the level of the tide. And then I hope that those same folks that spent all that money in the Great Recession spend a whole lot of more money because it's not going to be a big enough wave to come over the seawall. I trust that we're going to get better, in other words, that the economy is going to improve, that we're going to be feeling better about our long-term prospects, and we're going to look a little bit longer term. What happened in the Great Recession is we were focused on the hemorrhaging caused by the Great Recession. And so we're focused on this month's mortgage payment and this month's paycheck. And climate change seemed a long way away. But in normal times, we'll return to let's cope with this. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a 25, this is what I think respectable economists tell us, is that a $25 per ton price on carbon dioxide, which is where most people are talking about, somewhere there, maybe a little bit higher, but somewhere around $25 a ton, adds 25 cents per gallon to the price of gasoline. So, and 1 to 2 cents per kilowatt hour on electricity. Depends on where you are as to where you fall in that range. If you're in Indiana, you're at the high end because they're 97% coal. If you're in South Carolina, you're right in the middle because we get 50% of our power from nuclear. So it depends on where you are, where you live as to the electricity impact. But the price of gasoline is 25 cents per gallon, which we're used to seeing that kind of fluctuation, right? I mean, we've become accustomed to those kind of swings. So it's not like it's prohibitive. And remember, in our plan, you've got money in your pocket from a payroll tax reduction or a other kind of income tax reduction. So now you can afford that 25 cents. You might even be able to afford the new hybrid or the Volt without the $7,500 credit, because then GM is really interested in selling that car. Not that they're not interested now. They've got a market for it because we, consumers, are interested in it. Because we've seen the price signal and we see where this thing is going. And therefore we get interested in the Volt, right? And we start buying those and the technology takes off. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I think the key to what you just said, I hope everybody heard it, is that we think are more sustainable, right? And that's the wisdom of a bureaucratic system that I'm not willing to trust as a conservative. That I'd rather trust the wisdom of the marketplace. That if you just put a price signal out there, the marketplace will figure out whether wind is good in Oklahoma or whether it's not good in Oklahoma, or whether solar is better in Oklahoma. It'll probably decide that wind is better in Oklahoma and Texas and that solar is better in California. But I'd prefer as a conservative not to have the government making that choice, but rather some people that know a lot about electricity they're trying to sell to a customer and trying to figure out how to make a spread on that so they can make money for their shareholders. I think that's a wonderful discipline. And so, but again, that's back to my faith in the free enterprise system and how these things work. If you think that it's rather what we're looking for is a technological answer, then you want to sort of have somebody step in with a technological answer rather than leave it to the markets. But I think that market is going to be far more creative and dynamic than any kind of regulatory answer. That's it. Yes, sir.
I thought your proposal about a remarket solution very thought-provoking and very constructive. What concerns me is some of the stuff that you alluded to earlier in the conversation. For example, in a there was really no debate here about the science that clearly are changing the atmosphere, we are causing. But in fact, there is. That's why you're not in Congress.
Yeah.
Your voters are unwilling to even admit that there's reality. And that, I think, that's where much of the conversation kind of comes crashing down. We can't have the rational conversation you're having now with folks who don't admit what's going on.
Yeah, great. So, you see, I'm preparing you for Charlie, right? Charlie's coming to Thanksgiving. Does anybody have an uncle like I'm talking about besides Mary Ashton? My brother, my oldest brother, he will be at Thanksgiving, and this is what he'll be saying, right? And so here's what I think we've got to convince Charlie. Is that, Charlie, there's a solution that is not anathema. One of the main reasons, I've got about literally a dozen reasons that I've written about and talked about a lot, a dozen reasons why conservatives reject action on climate change. But I'll give you top two. One of them is the solution is anathema. The solution of a bigger government that regulates more and taxes more is anathema. So therefore we go back and doubt whether there's a problem or not. And so it's sort of like this. Understand you have a back problem. Here's the plan of surgery for your back problem. First, we're going to remove your head. Then once you get your head off, we work on your spine, we put your head back on. Thanks, doc, I'm feeling a lot better. I don't have a problem. I don't have a back problem anymore, right? Because the solution is crazy. Yeah, and so you say, I don't want it. I don't have a problem anymore. So conservatives saw cap and trade for the disaster that it was. Hopelessly complicated, embarrassing the free allocations of the well-connected, decimated American manufacturing, and a massive tax increase. And they said no, and they branded it cap and tax. And I realize there's some people that want to resuscitate cap and trade, but I would say to you, it is graveyard dead, and a resurrection is a bigger miracle than a resuscitation. And so, that thing would be miraculous if it came back. So better to switch to a solution that can be presented as completely wholly new and different. Then Charlie can consider it. The other thing, another reason that conservatives instinctively reject action on climate, I think, is that we're used to seeing this movie. We have seen this movie before. That the liberals gin up hysteria about some cause. When Mary Ashton was little and her brother were little, they drank a lot of apple juice. And at the time, some people here may be parents old enough to remember this, ALAR was going to kill them. It was a pesticide, I think, sprayed on apple trees, and it was going to kill all of our children, or deform them or maim them or something. And so there's a hue and cry about, oh my gosh, we got to eliminate ALAR, we got to do this, we got to do that. Well, Mary Ashton's fine, Robert's fine. They did all right, drinking all that ALAR. And so conservatives have seen this movie over and over, this hysteria that's generated, and then comes a chokeload of regulations and a massive tax increase and a growth of government and a loss of liberty as the nanny state grows. And they don't want to see it again. They don't want to see the movie. And they say, no, leave me alone. Leave me in liberty. And so, therefore, they're looking for, we got to find a solution that fits that doesn't talk about, this is why, by the way, if you go to our website, you'll see, oh, by the way, I gotta get Mary Ashton and Gordon to do this. A second thing, can you all hand these out? This is the second card that you gotta have before you leave here. Because either go to our website or fill out this card if you want to be part of this Republican thing. If you don't, make sure to leave them on the back so that I can hand these out to somebody else. We don't want to waste the cards. If we can gather this tribe that shows that there's a free enterprise answer, then Charlie and other conservatives can see that there is something that fits with his values and that isn't about alarmism. And what I was going to say is you go to our website, what you'll see is that we talk about reasonable risk avoidance. Now, there's a problem with that politically, I will tell you. It's basically this. How many people get excited here and willing to write a check for reasonable risk avoidance, right? Nobody ever wrote in the memo section of a check, reasonable risk avoidance. What they will write in the check is when the environmental left sends you a picture of a polar bear and how it's going to die, a lot of mamas and the papas in progressive tables, kitchen tables, will sit and write a check for $35 to save that polar bear. Now, the problem with conservatives is we think that if Sarah would shoot that thing and stuff it and put it right in front of the fireplace, we'd be all right. But anyway, so, just joking. I don't think Sarah's going to shoot the polar bear. Anyway, so, but the point is that we talk about reasonable risk avoidance rather than apocalyptic visions. Because yet another, now I'm giving you a third reason on the top 10, or a dozen, is that when conservatives hear apocalyptic visions about New York City going blah, 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 they say, they just check out because if you think about it, it's a reasonable thing to do to check out, and all of us do. If you're presented with an existential threat, denial is a pretty good coping mechanism. But if you give me some hope that I can do something to affect the course that's coming my way, the path that I must take, then I'll engage with you. But otherwise, denial is a pretty good coping mechanism. So that's why we talk about reasonable risk avoidance, not the apocalyptic visions. We'll leave that to the environmental left. It works well for them. They make a lot of money off of it and get a lot of people all excited, understand that fundraising imperative. But we want to talk about reasonable risk avoidance because it's the way into a conservative heart and mind. And yes, we conservatives do have hearts. I don't know if you knew that or not, but even Dick Cheney, well, he had one, but now he's got a machine, I think. No, he's got a real heart now. He's got, anyway. Noah, when are you going to give me the hook here? When am I supposed to be finished? Okay, great. Yes, sir. Yeah.
And he says, I'm with you, let's do this. I love your analogy for the insurance.
Yeah.
Right? I may not agree with you, but I think we should do something about it because even though we're going from a fossil fuel boom in this country, it's still a limited resource, correct? At some point, it's still a limited resource.
Right.
It's still a renewable.
Right.
So all of a sudden, you start closing renewable programs, hydro, wind, and they get opposed. I hate wind. I will forget, it's opposed in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
New wind farms in New Hampshire are being opposed. It really has a sign. We're not a fan. Now what do we do?
Yeah, that is a challenge, isn't it? The NIMBY principle will affect us on this and everything, right? I just hope that we gotta fight those battles, and and try to persuade people that that wind turbines offshore will be like sailboats. I love sailing, and I think that wind turbines are really beautiful. But that's just my personal preference. I think they're wonderful things to look at. I think they're very exciting, but some people don't like to look at them. But we just got to convince enough people that they're pretty, and they look like sailboats out there in the water. But yeah, it'll remain a challenge, sir. Yeah.
Is there a way you can keep the revenue that these local sources will create locals that can benefit from the local resources that they're creating by having a windmill in their backyard? I know that works in Hull because they own their electric grid versus having private tax and the money energy going elsewhere. So is that something that would work within the carbon tax? And then also, is it just a corporate tax option?
Yeah.
And that seems like it would become, make this whole idea more palatable to the Labour Party.
Yeah.
But that becomes regressive because poorer people have a high percentage of their money going to fuel, and then you'd be giving rich people tax cuts. So
Yeah.
do you think that you could get a carbon tax that had a per capita reimbursement that was the same amount to every citizen? Would you get that through Congress so you actually had a progressive policy?
Well, here's what I think that the FICA tax is the one that is most likely. FICA tax reduction, that's the payroll tax, 12.4%, the first dollar of income. That's the most likely corresponding tax cut. But here's the thing. If you're a progressive like Barack Obama and you're making the State of the Union address and you say climate change is a fact, I'm here to tell you that Barack Obama was not helping the cause when he said that he was not doing climate change work. What he was doing was midterm electioneering. He was trying to gin up his base and get them excited because people don't like Obamacare, and he was trying to divert attention from that to get his base something else to focus on. And so he said, climate change is a fact. It didn't help us. It's sort of like slapping Uncle Charlie at Thanksgiving. It's just not going to help to do that. What he could have done, if I were writing the speech for him, is this what I would have had him say. I would have had him gesture to his right and say, folks on my side of the aisle are ready to price carbon dioxide through a carbon tax. I understand that you folks on this side of the aisle, the Republicans, insist on it being revenue neutral. So John, Speaker Boehner, here's a deal for you. We'll give you the votes for pricing carbon dioxide, and you get to choose a corresponding tax cut. Deal? And You know, the risk for Barack Obama, right, is that John chooses a corporate income tax reduction, right? And so all the people on this side of the aisle, the Democrats, are all upset and frowned up because the people on this side of the aisle, their supporters, are all getting corporate income tax reduction. But let's play that out one cycle and see how that works. Next cycle, there'll be almost nobody sitting over here, and in fact, this side will have to take up spaces on this side of the House chamber because anybody that votes for a corporate income tax reduction is susceptible to a campaign ad from this side that says, yo-and-so Republican voted for a carbon tax coupled with a cut in ExxonMobil's taxes. So ExxonMobil got the money, and Widow Jones is paying higher energy prices. Vote Democrat. And so, like I say, the Democrats go over here and they fill up all these former Republican seats. So John isn't going to do that, right? He'd like to do it. And I got a friend, Kevin Hassett at American Enterprise Institute. If you gave him 4 blackboards here at Boston College, he could fill up those blackboards and explain to you how it is that a cut in labor, and a cut in corporate income taxes redounds mostly to the benefit of labor. But it would take him 4 blackboards. And at the end of the 4 blackboards, if you followed the very sophisticated economic argument, you might be persuaded. But in 30-second spots, you don't get 4 blackboards. And so the answer is going to be FICA tax reduction, either that or a dividend. The reason that we talk more about the tax cut rather than dividend is the tax cut gives you what Art Laffer would tell us if he were here, and if you go to our website, you'll see him saying this, is it gives you improved economic performance because then you're making work more profitable. So anything you can do to reduce taxes on income is very exciting to an economy. Whereas a dividend is simply just giving money back, and it really doesn't, you don't get that change in behavior that you hope to get out of a reduction in marginal income tax rates, which is what you're accomplishing by reducing FICA taxes. Right, well, you could. That's one way to do it. But again, if you're Barack Obama, you can make that offer. John may, in his head, think pretty quickly about corporate or capital gains tax reduction. But then, is he going to do it? Probably not. He's probably going to go to the FICA tax. So, in other words, it's a pretty riskless proposition for the president to make that offer. But that's a kind of deal offer that could change things. You know, it could break us out of this impasse, is that then people are getting something that they otherwise like to get. Because here's what I hope I'd pass along, because I know Noah now, he's on one leg, he's getting ready to come give me the hook, is that what I was saying to the college Republicans earlier, I'd say to you, is that in normal times in America, and we have been living in very abnormal times, political times, I think, particularly in the Great Recession. In normal times in America, it's okay if my opponent is smiling while I'm smiling, even if we're smiling for completely different reasons. So, you know, one of the things that inspired me about this operation is that, or what I'm doing nowadays, is that Art Laffer is a neighbor of Al Gore's in Nashville, Tennessee. Art Laffer, remember, was Ronald Reagan's economics advisor, did the Laffer curve, as you remember. So Art looked around, he wanted to leave California, he looked around for states where he might live, and there were 8 states that qualified to receive his residency. Do you know what those 8 states had in common for Art Laffer? No income tax, no state income tax. So Tennessee was one of those, and they ended up getting the Art Laffer household. And so Art turns out to be a neighbor, literally, of Al Gore's. He's been over to Al's house, and I heard this story from Art, that they talked it through, and they came to the conclusion that this worked for both of them. A revenue-neutral, border-adjustable carbon tax works for both of them. Art is agnostic as to climate change. He'll say, and if you go to our website, you'll hear him saying, I don't know whether it's real or not. He says, I don't need to know. All I need to know is you're taxing income and you're not taxing emissions, something you maybe want less of. He says it's a no-brainer. Change what you tax. So if we get this done, Art will be smiling because he got reduction in taxes. Al Gore, meanwhile, will be smiling because we're going to see substantial reductions in emissions. And what economists almost all across the political spectrum agree would be the most powerful way to affect change here. So in normal America, those two people can be smiling for completely different reasons. But in the Great Recession, our misery got so bad that the only thing that could make us a little bit less miserable is if our opponents were writhing in agony before us. That way we could feel a little bit less miserable about our own circumstances. But that's not normal America. In normal America, we're looking for solutions that move the country forward, that make it so America, the problem solver, delivers these solutions. And then we're all smiling, maybe for different reasons. So if you're a conservative here, I hope you'll join us and fill out one of those cards and give it to me, because we must build a tribe. Politics is all about who you got with you. The reason the NRA is so powerful is they got a lot of people with them. And what we've got to substantiate to Republican elected officials is we've got some people with us. And what matters is where you're from and how closely we can connect you to that member of Congress or that senator. Then they realize that they can do what they otherwise want to do, because there are many Republicans who know the science here and who understand what we're talking about and see a solution. They just don't yet see a constituency that would support them if they challenge the temporary orthodoxy. And so by joining the tribe and building the tribe, you'll show them the support that will cause them to step out and to start to lead. Because the reality is politicians follow, they don't lead. And so we've got to show them you leading, and then they'll follow you. And if you're a progressive here and you don't want to join Republican, well then keep that card and give it to Charlie at Thanksgiving, all right? And get him to join up with Republicans. And by the way, if you're a libertarian, may I offer you the opportunity to brand Libertarian with an E-N. I'd be happy to spawn that among libertarians and have you run Libertarian while we're running Republican. And if you want to run Independent, there's an opportunity for you there. The E-N works in the middle of Independent. So we'll build these tribes, we'll show their support, and then we'll be smiling, perhaps for very different reasons, but America will step up to be the indispensable nation and solve this challenge. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you.
Thank you very much.